Well, welcome to the Prestone Kitchen Table. We had a big week, didn't we? Certainly a big weekend up in Scotland for what was the third round of this year's Prestone British Rally Championship. And my goodness me, if you watched the little preview that Jack and I did last week, you know that we thought it was going to be close. We thought it was going to be tight. We knew it was going to be competitive. And, we've got Jack Benyon from Motorsport News with us again to talk about it. Jack, it was all of those things and more. It was a fantastic rally.
It was a brilliant one, wasn't it? And it was almost like the BRC reacting to the WRC Rally Argentina the few weeks before, wasn't it? How close that was, and then did its own attempt to have such a close rally. So yeah, like we predicted, it was going to be close, and it really delivered on that, didn't it?
Well, let's talk about that then, Jack. It was really that battle in the final stage, or certainly in the final loop, between David Bogie and Freddie Olin that we were watching. They went out of service for the final two stages. There was 1.4 seconds between them. They went into the final stage with 0.1 of a second separating them. Now, you got to say that really all through the weekend, it favoured Bogie, that battle, didn't it? Because he knew those stages so well. But my goodness me, it was ding-dong. It was backwards and forwards all weekend, and clearly Bogie came out on top. But that perhaps doesn't tell us the whole story of that final stage.
Absolutely not. You know, it's a sad thing that we'll never know how quick Colin was through that last stage. And all weekend, he kind of assigned himself to second place in a way. You know, every time you spoke to him over the weekend, it was, I'm here for points. I'm here to finish the rally. I'm just, doing the best job I possibly can. And who could blame him? You know, going into the rally, he had a huge championship lead and was looking to keep hold of that on his favourite surface. As we, if you watched preview last week, is what we talked about, the fact that Frederick is suits gravel better, and the tarmac rounds that are coming up maybe not going to suit him quite as well. So it was an important rally for him to bag some points, and that was the attitude that he took into the weekend. And unfortunately, we'll never know from that last stage, where he was going to finish, whether it was going to be second or first. But the one thing that's come out of it is we've got a huge championship swing, and everything's so much closer together after that.
It is quite remarkable, and we do feel for Freddie Olin. As you say, he was very much looking to put himself in a dominant position going on to tarmac. Now, we know that tarmac isn't necessarily his favourite surface. I think he'll do well. We look back to last year in particular, to the Circuit of Ireland, and he was very quick there. He made a couple of mistakes, but he was very quick. But for sure, he needed those points. But, we look to David Bogie. This has reignited his season. Osian Price, who finished second, some might say now perhaps the championship favourite. You even look down, Jack, to Marty McCormack with a second podium in a row, with Ypres coming up, an event he's done twice. He knows so well, such a specialist event. And it opens up the championship completely, that result, and the fact that poor old Freddie scored nothing.
Absolutely. This championship was fantastic last year with having Elvin Evans here, having someone of real WRC standard to set the pace for these guys. But what we're seeing this year is something a little bit different, in the sense that they've all made that step up, as they were trying to last year to keep up with Elvin. But they've all made this step up together, and we're seeing such close rallying between the set of them. And as you've just referred to there, there's 4 or 5 people who are a few further, a little bit further down in the points, who could really make a challenge for this championship. There's some tarmac experts in there that you would expect to do really well in some of those rounds. So it's going to be so interesting to see which one of those guys can really make a step up and challenge for this championship. And as you rightly said with Frederick as well, he showed good pace last year. His times on the Isle of Man were comparable to Mark Higgins, so that's not bad pace in my eyes on tarmac. So there's no way he's going to be out of it on tarmac.
No, absolutely not. And you're quite right. If you're comparing him to Higgins on the Isle of Man, then that's some performance. But let's talk about the man who finished second. David Bogie was the man who finished first, and what a rally he had. He needed to win that. He had such a disappointing start to the year with the broken suspension, hit that rock on the Borders County, had those brake problems on the Pirelli, and he bounced back magnificently. Didn't look that way after the opening stage. You remember the opening stage was 8 miles, round about 11 kilometers, 12 kilometers, a little more than that. And he was 17 seconds down, but he never gave up. He was very tenacious, Bogie, over the weekend, put in some stunning times, as we know he's capable of doing, and quite rightly won that event. But for me, the interesting one is the man that you had perhaps as a winner for the event, Osian Price. Again, Jack, it was a tough weekend for him. He had his share of problems, fair share of problems out there. But another driver who stuck at it got himself into a fight with the hapless Keith Cronin, who can't buy any luck right now. He really is incredibly unlucky, that poor lad. But Price did absolutely everything he had to do, and it was an impressive drive.
I thought really impressive. You can look at Osh's performance in two different ways. Yes, he didn't really have the outright pace to compete with Frederick and David on the day, but no driver can be on the lead pace on every single stage of every single rally in any championship. And what we're seeing from Osh is when he knows he's not quite there, he's finishing rallies. As we said in the preview, he's showed that at the start of the season that he can get, he can nurse a car. He's not too hard on the car. He looks after the tyres well, and he brings the car home. We were talking about a puncture on the I think it was the second stage on Friday night. With the standards so high and the battles so close together, to have a puncture that would normally rule you out, and still we're talking about Osian finishing second. So he's a real contender for that championship, isn't he? And I'm not quite sure if he's championship favourite, but he's definitely there or thereabouts. 4 points behind now in the championship battle. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think maybe not quite championship favourite. Maybe I was getting a bit ahead of myself there. But can he win this championship, Jack, without winning a rally? We've seen that done in the past. It is about the intelligent, measured approach, and that is exactly what we're seeing from Price. Is it possible for him to win this title, the British Rally Championship, without bagging a rally this year?
I think it's possible, but extremely unlikely. I think he needs a lot of help from some of the other drivers in the remaining rounds in order to win without winning a rally. I think that's very, very unlikely. Whether he can win a rally is another debate altogether, isn't it? You would say that gravel's his favourite surface, I suppose. So
well, Jack, but he put me right on that. That's what I assumed, and I said that to him. I think at the final stop line, I said we move onto tarmac. It's going to be a little more difficult for you. Gravel's your preferred surface. He said, "Look, God, I don't have a preferred surface. I'm just as comfortable on tarmac as I am on gravel." But I suppose the big thing, Jack, is he doesn't have tarmac R5 experience, and that could hold him back.
Absolutely, yeah, you might be right there. I think he is going to struggle with the experience of the car. We saw him in the border counties just struggling a little bit with the new Evo 2 Fiesta, just to kind of be really all out on the pace in that event with the car. So he could suffer the same thing on tarmac as well. We don't know, but I think for me, the step that Frederick has taken on asphalt towards the end of the year last year means that he will either win or be in the top three on most of the tarmac rallies, unless he has a problem. So for me, Osian is not going to win this championship unless he can win a round or Frederick has problems. I'd
agree with that. I'd absolutely agree with that. But you did say at the start there that he may get a little bit of help from some other drivers. Now that might well be what we see in Ypres, for example. It's very difficult going into the next round to pick a favourite for Ypres. But for me, you can't really look too far beyond Martin McCormack. McCormack is finding some consistency. He's one that never really seems to take too much of a risk, but has a very strong, comfortable pace. He's done Ypres a couple of times before. I was there when he was on his first event. I remember thinking, who is this Irish kid that's setting these timesheets alight? He was setting some remarkable stage times. So we all know, Jack, Ypres is all about experience. McCormack hasn't got the outright pace, but it's a long, long rally. Some of the youngsters won't have experience of that. He's got 2 rallies in Ypres under his belt. He's comfortable in that car. For me, he might be the man. He might be the man to win Ypres for the BRC boys.
It's absolutely going to be interesting to see how he gets on, and I think you're right to pick him out as a person to look for, because he's done the event a few times now and has that experience. This is an event, we're not talking about a normal asphalt event here, we're talking about Ypres. It's a very, very different rally. The cuts that you need to take and the commitment that you need to push as much as these boys do over in Ypres. They know the road so well, they know where the cuts are, they're good with their notes, and that's going to be something that's going to be very, very new for some of the BRC boys. So it's going to be, Marty has got that experience, like you say, so he's going to be there or thereabouts, no doubt about that.
Is it possible in Ypres to take a cautious approach and bag yourself a good haul of points, or do you have to be pushing? Do you have to be taking the cuts? Do you have to be going where the fast boys are going?
I think that depends on where you want to finish the event. If you want to be fighting with these boys at the top and you want to be winning the Ypres rally, then there's absolutely no way that you can not be on it for the whole event from the first stage to the last stage. You've got to take every cut. You've got to take a bigger cut than the person did before you. It's one of those events where it really favours the brave. And if you want to win the event, then that's what you've got to do. If you do want to score points, you can take less cuts and try and bring the car home. You take less risks of getting punctures like the lead boys will do by taking the big cuts. So, you can take a conservative approach, but if you want to be competitive, then you cannot be conservative at any point in the Ypres Rally.
Well, I totally agree with you in terms of winning it outright. But remember, we've got, some Belgian specialists there. We've clearly got Thierry Neuville there. I'm not so sure. I think perhaps it's a long event, this one. Remember, lots of night stages as well. I'm not so sure that perhaps that applies to this event. I think maybe the likes of Freddie Olin, who we know that isn't under pressure to win this one, can afford to be a little more conservative. I think maybe a sensible approach from him in this rally could well pay dividends, because as you rightly say, Jack, punctures are a big issue here. Knowing where the cuts are, knowing how deep you can go into those cuts. If you can avoid the cuts, okay, you risk obviously sliding an awful lot if you're on the mud, but if you can avoid the cuts, you avoid the potential for big time loss. And I think this rally, from the British Championship point of view, could be about avoiding time loss, perhaps for once, rather than about gaining the extra tenths of a second.
I think maybe if we're just talking in a British rally context, then you could well be right there, because for example, we looked at the Circuit of Ireland last year, and our winner was quite a bit down the order in the overall terms. So the winner of the British Rally Championship Ypres Rally may be 7th or 8th overall. We don't actually know that.
Yeah.
So an all-out push for the victory is not really going to benefit any of our guys unless they want the trophy on the mantle. So if you're talking about a championship assault, then a conservative approach might see you a bit further down the overall order, but might reward you in terms of the British Rally Championship.
And I think our boys, most of our boys anyway, are looking at that. The one who might not be, because perhaps you could argue his championship challenge is over, might be a little bit early to say that, but it's certainly looking very perilous, is poor old Tom Cave. Jack, what can you tell us, if anything, about what happened with Cave? It's strange deja vu, isn't it? Remember, it was 2 stages, 2-stage wins on the Pirelli, something broke. 2-stage wins on the Scottish, and the wheels quite literally came off his Hyundai i20. We're not getting a lot of information out of them as to why that happened, but there's a suggestion that it might have been something that broke as opposed to Cave making a mistake.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And Tom, at the end of when he came back into the service park, insisted that there'd been no crash or he hadn't hit anything. So that's all we know at this point, really. And Hyundai haven't commented on the car at all. But what we do know is that the car's proved that it's fragile on gravel. What we also know is that we've only got 1 round left in the British Rally Championship that involves gravel, and that's the Nicky Grist, which is only half gravel. So the events we're looking at now are all tarmac, and the car is proven, its pace is proven on tarmac. So for me, Tom's going to be he's going to be in with a shout. A lot of people maybe not know that Cave's been to Ypres as well. So
he didn't get very far when he went, but you're quite right. He's done the recce, which is the main thing. He got about 300 meters into the first stage and was parked up with the other 2 Protons that time he was there. But you're quite right. He has been there before.
Yeah, the engine failure on the Proton, I think it was, wasn't it?
All three chucked rods through the side of the engine. I had the misfortune of sitting at the bar with poor old Chris Mellors that evening, and I genuinely have never seen a team boss so dejected. Who was it? It was Tom. Was it Alistair McRae, and who else was in the third one? I can't off the top of my head remember, but you're right. Even just doing the recce and being part of the whole Ypres circus, if you like, Jack, will help in terms of Tom's preparation.
Absolutely, yeah. He's without doubt one of the pace setters in the championship, isn't he? I don't think you can take that away from him. We've seen that with the Hyundai and with the Fiesta to a certain extent as well. So he's one of the guys who's going to be there or thereabouts. And Frederick Colin's another person who's done the event before and has a little bit of experience of the event too. So, but yeah, when you mentioned Cave's championship charge briefly there, and he's on 22 points, and the leaders are up over 50. So, even looking at the chance of double points to a certain extent on the Isle of Man, he's still quite a way off there, isn't he? And no sign of any sort of confirmation from Hyundai just yet that they're going to be out again this year. I did see something retweeted on Twitter before that said, Tom was entered in Ypres, and that was my understanding, although it's not been officially announced. So we'll see him in Ypres, and then after that, we don't know. But yeah, I think the championship may be a bit.
Fingers crossed, Jack. 'Cause I agree with you. I think the Hyundai will be a different beast on the tarmac. It will give Tom reliability. It will give him the opportunity for sure to not just win stages, but hopefully to win rallies. So fingers crossed we do see him in Ypres and then in subsequent tarmac rallies. Now, before we finish, we can't really go without talking about someone who we just briefly touched about early on, a guy who's having absolutely no luck, but that will turn. And when it does turn, we know he's quick. Keith Cronin. You got a feel for the boy, haven't you? How many punctures did he have over the weekend? Battling with Osian Price for third place, and ultimately it would have been second place in the final stage. Yet another puncture. Quite often there's cause and effect, isn't there, with punctures? But I just feel as if he is struggling, not for potentially speed, probably not for confidence, just struggling to find any luck.
I think, it's a real cliche to say that we've got unlucky drivers, isn't it? But, we've spent the last year and a half talking about how unlucky David Bogie is, and on so many occasions he's had the pace to win rallies. We've seen it with his stage times, and he's not quite managed to put the whole weekend together. Luckily, that was corrected over the weekend, and I did joke with David at the end of the event that I don't need to write about him anymore because I don't need to remind anyone that he's good. He's proved it for himself, so that's quite nice. But with Keith, exactly the same thing. It does seem to be displaying this real bad luck, doesn't it? And I don't think he's driving over aggressively, and that's causing the punctures. I don't think that's the case. It's just sheer bad luck for Keith. And people are quick to write him off, but he's a 3-time British Rally champion. You don't become a 3-time British Rally champion unless you are a quality driver. And Keith, you can't take anything away from Keith, in my opinion. It's taken him a bit of a while to get up to speed with the Fiesta, as we talked about last week. He spent a year driving the DS3. Probably best not to comment any further on that, but the Fiesta is taking him. It's taken him a little while to bed into it, and he's getting there. Almost 3 years without any sort of gravel rallies until the start of this year. The first 3 of this year will be the first time he's done 3 in a row, for example, for 2 or 3 years. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he gets on in the tarmac. For me, he's not so confident he's going to be straight up to speed in the Fiesta on tarmac, but we'll just wait and see, because I'm definitely not writing him off.
No, he can't be written off, can he? He's got explosive pace. He really does. But you're quite right. I do wonder about his approach to the Ypres rally. What's his mental approach? What's his strategy? How's he going to go about things? That for me could be interesting. He'll obviously have the M Sport guys there guiding him, and there are no better guys in the business. So fingers crossed that we see Cronin mixing it up, because there's still lots of stories for sure to be written in this year's Prestone British Rally Championship. Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure again talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. We perhaps reconvene later on this week to talk about our juniors, because once again, there was some competition in the juniors at the Scottish Rally.
Yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic event again for the Scottish. It was the third different winner in 3 different events for us for the Prestone Motorsport News British Rally Championship. So very good to see that, and it was nice to see Cameron Davis actually come through and win. He's a proper privateer. That operation is being run on an absolute shoestring, and to see him come through the Fiesta Trophy last year, which is in the BTRDA, a bit of an incentive from DMAC. He's won some tyres, and that's allowed him to step up to the BRC this year. And after 2 difficult events where he set quick stage times but wasn't able to put the whole events together with car problems and things like that, to see him come through in the Scottish and really kind of dominate the event. Really, I mean, there was a bit of a battle with Oscar Solberg for momentarily, but there was turbo issues for Oscar. So and once that had happened, Cameron showed he drove above his years really to show real experience of managing a lead, and held that gap at a minute and took the victory.
Yeah, and he was absolutely delighted, wasn't he, at the stop line, the final stop line at the podium ceremony in Moffat. Absolutely delighted to take that first win. And it's a big, big step up, as you say, for him. And it should hopefully allow him to move on now and find some consistency. But as I said, we'll hopefully have a little bit of a more in-depth look at the juniors later on in the week. Jack Benyon from Motorsport News, thank you very much indeed, as always, for your time and your thoughts.
No problem. Always happy to be here, Colin. Thank you very much.
Lovely. That's Jack Benyon. Guys, thank you very much indeed for joining us at the Prestone kitchen table. Thank you for putting up with my hat. It is a lovely summer's day out there, and I'm having a bad hair day, so I'm going to keep it on for the rest of the day. As I say, Jack and I hopefully will have a little catch-up later on in the week, but don't forget, you can catch up at the MSA BRC site. You can catch up at the Prestone Facebook page with little videos, little stories, Jack's little written pieces that he does for Motorsport News. So, yes, thank you very much indeed for joining us at the kitchen table.